I froze. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. A cheap oscillating fan rattled on the floor, barely moving the stifling air. It was 104 degrees outside. In here, it was worse. And this was where my married daughter was living. She was pale, thinner than I remembered. I asked the only question I could manage through the tightness in my throat. Why? Her eyes darted to the house across the yard. They said no non-family members are allowed inside, not even for meals, not even me. The words hit harder than the heat. Her husband's parents had money, land, cars, the kind of respect you buy in a small town. And they were keeping my daughter in a glorified oven because she wasn't blood. I didn't yell, didn't storm into their house. I just said, "Pack your things." She hesitated. But now. We left in silence. She kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected someone to stop us. No one did. I didn't drive home. I drove 2 states away, to a small cabin I'd bought years ago and never told anyone about. It took 2 days for the first message to come. Her husband, then his parents, then their lawyer. They didn't ask where she was, they demanded. Apparently, I had no right to take her. Apparently, she was their responsibility. I ignored them. But their desperation told me something. They needed her there, and not for love. It took a week for me to find out why. A quiet call from an old friend in town, the kind who hears everything. Turns out, the in-laws had signed up for a grant program. Money from the government for housing and supporting a family member. Except they were keeping most of it. My daughter was the box they ticked on the application. That explained the sudden panic. Without her, the checks would stop. I could have gone to the police. I didn't. The law moves slow. Revenge, when done right, doesn't. I started small. Every message they sent, I logged. Every threat, every insult. Screenshots, recordings, timestamps. I even sent polite replies, asking them to clarify their words, so they'd double down and put their cruelty in writing. Then, I reached out to 3 people. 1, a local reporter who hated the family for reasons I didn't need to ask about. 2, a friend in the state housing office. 3, my lawyer. We built the story like a slow, careful fire. 3 weeks in, I made my first move. I sent the in-laws a message. I'll bring her back next Sunday. We'll discuss conditions. They bit immediately, called my bluff, laughed over text about finally putting her in her place. I drove back that Sunday. Not alone. The reporter was there, parked down the street. My friend from housing, too, wearing his badge. I walked my daughter up their driveway, holding her hand like she was 6 years old again. The family stood on the porch, smug and ready. "About time," her father-in-law said. "Bring her inside. We need to finish some paperwork." That's when my friend stepped forward. "Actually, I'd like to see that paperwork too." The color drained from his face so fast I almost laughed. The reporter stepped up next, camera already recording. "Sir, can you comment on why your daughter-in-law was being housed in a shed during extreme heat?" They froze, stammered, denied. That's when I pulled out the stack of printed messages. Every insult, every admission, every threat. The housing official read the first few lines and looked at them like they were filth. The reporter caught every second. The shouting started. Not from me, from them. Accusing me of betrayal, of ruining their reputation, of lying. I didn't bother arguing. I just said, "You should have thought about that before you made her a prop for your greed." Then I turned to my daughter. "We're done here." It took less than a month for the fallout to hit. The housing department cut their funding. The local paper ran a front-page story with a photo of the shed. Neighbors turned cold. Friends stopped visiting. Their name, once polished, became a joke. And their son, my daughter's husband, filed for divorce. Not because he finally stood up for her, but because he thought she'd be bad for his image. She didn't cry. She signed the papers with the same calm I had that day in the driveway. I never told her the full extent of what I'd done. How I'd slipped copies of those messages to people who would make sure they never forgot. How I'd ensured they'd be under quiet investigation for tax fraud next. She just knew we were safe, and that the cabin was hers for as long as she needed. Revenge isn't about rage. Rage burns fast. It's about patience.